Even on those days where you think, I have nothing to give, I can't progress, just that one step forward, what more can you give?
Welcome to the Tales to Inspire podcast. Before we get started on this episode, I would like to invite you to our community so that you can hear more stories to inspire change within your life and positive change within the systems in which we live. All I want you to do is to click on the subscribe button. Your comments mean the world to us with anything that's resonated with you, and I absolutely love your support. I can't wait to go on this journey alongside you. Thank you so much for subscribing. Let's get into today's episode. Today, our bite-sized episode is with Kate Appleby.
I'm Kate Appleby, and this is my Tale to Inspire.
Kate, we're going straight into this. It's going to be fun. This is going to be so much fun. Just to let everyone know, we've already jumped into so much weird and wonderful things that we talked about, and I can't believe we didn't press the record button. So, adapting to circumstances, Kate. Yes. Tell me what adapting to circumstances means for you.
So, I live by the kind of motto about thrive or survive, and to me, every single person, regardless of your background or your situation, you are every single day challenged with a set of circumstances, right? Whether it be you get up and the weather isn't what you're expecting, or your day at work is more challenging than you expected. Every single day will present opportunities and challenges, and it's about what you do in those circumstances. I think often we get distracted by talking about privilege or background, but we all have a certain amount of capability in our day to choose whether we want to thrive or we want to survive. And some days you just have to survive, and some days you have that capability to thrive. So I live my day every day trying to see what I can adapt, what I can overcome, and what I can do ultimately to make sure there are more days where I'm thriving rather than just surviving.
Do you feel that as humans we're naturally good at adapting, and do you feel like we have a tendency to be better at either thriving or surviving?
So it's a really interesting question. I think we naturally are meant to be able to adapt, right? Every single species, if you look historically over evolution, has that ability to adapt. We have to adapt in order to survive. So there is a natural ability in us to want to do that. But it's not easy, it's painful, right? Sometimes adapting means going without, or actually being in physical pain or being in emotional pain. Adapting doesn't necessarily come easy, but we're fixated on the goal at the end of it. So I think adapting is a choice, adapting is a process, adapting is sometimes a long, painful process that you have to really buy into. I think naturally we are brought into the process, but I think we're starting to live in a world where maybe we're a little bit more distant from that choice. Maybe we live in a world where things are so quick and easy to do. Maybe we're just a little bit more distant from that. So I think it's easier for us to choose not to adapt, but we are still fundamentally meant to be able to adapt, if that makes sense.
And in that note, then, if you look at communities in which we live, do you feel that we are more in a tendency to adapt to survive or adapt to thrive? Like, where do you feel like we're at as a community right now?
It's a really tricky situation. I think it's probably 50-50. I think when you look at our communities, and there are so many people, especially in the world that we're sadly living now, where their situation, whether it be financial or background or war or whatever it might be, that they are in a situation where it is almost impossible for them to do anything but just survive. But then there are also a set of people where they have the ability to maybe thrive. You know, if you look at people that have an albeit limited amount of capability, those are the people that can go and progress and whatnot. So I think it's really tricky, but I think it's probably 50-50 and split. What I think we don't do well as a society is actually working out where that barrier lies and what we can do about it. So for me personally, as somebody that's kind of chronically ill, for example, a lot of people that identify as chronically ill will often see the barriers as fixed without necessarily working out how to overcome those. So I think there's a whole group of people that sit in that middle ground that have the capability to potentially merge from surviving into thriving, but they're not empowered to do so, and that's what we really need to work on.
And if you look at it from that point of view, that's a huge barrier which could cause a lot of people to feel like a victim.
Yeah.
Which then disempowers them to feel like they can do anything about going from survival to thriving, I guess.
Yeah.
Which is a massive issue that we have within society, which is essentially those barriers that you see. Is there anything in terms of community, but more personal side of things, in terms of any things you put in place for yourself to help you adapt to the circumstances that you find yourself in?
So I think there's definitely two things. I think one is the mental remembering that I'm capable. I always talk about this fact that I have this kind of traffic light system. So I have like a red, amber and green pot, and each one of those is filled with tasks that, so on a green day, a challenge for me to do, maybe climb a mountain or go for a run, big challenges when I'm really fit and well. Amber are things that maybe are in the middle ground, maybe go and do some cooking, or maybe, you know, go out with a friend. And red are when I'm having like a really, really bad day, and they might just be, I don't know, call a friend or go and sit outside and have a coffee. But each one of those tasks is fundamentally designed to remind me that I have that ability, given my circumstances, whatever they may be, to make the choice between survive and thrive. And just having that mentality helps me then go, okay, I have the toolkit I need to be able to then go and progress. I think also being able to then look at the day ahead and go, okay, what do I have? I know my traffic light system, but also physically, what have I got in front of me and what may I depend on? Have I got friends that I can kind of lean on? Have I got, you know, physical things in place that I can lean on? So I think it's about remembering your ability and being really pragmatic about it, but also having that fundamental push within you to try and push for more, even on those days where you think I have nothing to give, I can't progress. Just that one step forward, what more can you give?
That's so empowering just for me to hear that, because everyone starts at a different point.
Yeah.
But to have the opportunity and knowledge to know that there's something, I love that, red, amber, green. It's like so simple, and it's taught from childhood, like traffic lights. So it's something you could really use that with young people.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know?
And I think like I use that on a physical, because, you know, I am limited within my physical tasks sometimes. But if you think about anxiety or maybe stress levels, that kind of red, amber, green task thing could apply to so many people, because it just gives you that, right, I need to challenge myself today to do one more thing beyond my capability. And doing that every day reminds you that you are capable of one more thing than you think you are that day. And I think if you get into that mentality, you remember that on a morning where you wake up and think I'm surviving, by the time you go to bed, you could be thriving.
I think that's so inspiring. And the final question around this area that I have really is about, how long does it take you, and how do you create your own toolkit like you have? Has that only come from lived experience of overcoming, or has there been parts where actually it's not been because you've been through it, it's because you've read a book or you've been inspired by someone else?
Yeah, of course. So this is a really good question. When people ask me, you know, who inspires you, I say no one, and that sounds really odd, and I think that people might interpret that as being really arrogant. But for me personally, all of my strength comes from lived experience. Everybody has their own story, right? And I think that taking inspiration from other people only goes so far, because there is a barrier between taking inspiration and then comparing yourself. And so for me, I am a sponge to the world around me and taking little bits. But for me, it's just about building on my lived experience. So there are been situations in my life where I've had to choose between staying in the world and not staying in the world, and being here and not being, and fighting and giving up, and, you know, being lying sick or getting up. And there have been so many situations where I've had to make that choice about, you know, keeping myself safe or not, etc. Every single one of those choices has led me to where I am now. And for me, even when I'm in a situation now where I have to make a choice, I just look back on that library of events and remind myself that even the bad decisions haven't fundamentally led me to a bad place. So it's an interesting one. When people talk about inspiration, I think it's great to be a sponge, but don't rely on a single source for inspiration.
Because I think on that side of things, I did a post recently about comparing, and we always compare ourselves, so common, to others.
Completely.
But even comparing yourself to yourself is a really negative thing.
Absolutely.
Like recently, I rupture my Achilles, and essentially now when I go to the gym and I try and keep fit, if I compare myself to the Chris 6 months ago or 7 months ago, I'm like, I feel so down about it because I can't do what I was doing then. So I've gone downwards essentially, but actually remembering that progress isn't linear. That it's not like you get from one point to that point and that's the way. When things go pear-shaped and it goes downhill, that's the natural progression of progress.
I think we as humans, we look at our life as kind of this linear success pattern, and we start here and then we get promotion and a house and, you know, partner and child and blah blah blah, and then we get this cushy retirement, and we think of our life on that uphill. And you're completely right. Sometimes our book is just filled with lots of different chapters, and it doesn't necessarily need to be an uphill kind of success story. I've had a really difficult start to 2024, and I've spent a lot of my time ill or been in hospital, etc. And, you know, where if I look back on where I am now compared to where I was 12 months ago and what I am physically capable of, there's a whole stream of things that I am no longer able to do. And if I were to compare myself, like you said, that would be so dangerous. If I were to compare my story to other people's stories, that would also be quite dangerous because, you know, I've not recovered maybe as quick, or the treatment hasn't worked as well, or I haven't had the same finances or the same family support, etc., or whatever. So I think taking inspiration from other people and yourself is useful to an extent, but beyond that it can be quite dangerous too. So I think you have to just be mindful of where you take your inspiration from.